Everyone. I hope I'm live and everyone can hear me. And I'm just checking the settings, so give me a moment. Uh, Let me check if someone can hear me. That would be great if someone can confirm um, if you can hear me. So once we're done with all the settings, we are basically good to start this session today. Okay, perfect. I think it's all good. So, hello everyone. Welcome once again. I'm Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan, and welcome to this session, kind of a masterclass session, using the tools in the Chesslang platform. So they have developed, a lot of kind of interesting features, and they asked me to test it out. And so it's going to be an interactive session where I'll be asking a lot of questions to the audience who have joined me on the Chessling platform. And basically, the board, everything is set as you could see. And I'm excited to share two of my own games. So basically, it's going to be like I'm going to be asking you questions like what move would you play here, and then you're going to get graded for those moves. Like if you made the right move, you'd get points. If you make the wrong move, I guess you get negative points, something like that. So it's called the ask feature. So that's what basically we're going to be using to look at these games. So let us go into the games now. And so the first game that I have is a game that I played quite recently, technically before the lockdown, when tournaments used to happen. So this was a rapid tournament, and I had the white pieces, and my opponent was Amit Paul Singh, and he's from Hyderabad, and this was in a rapid tournament that I played in Bangalore, and. As I played with white, I started with d4. I'm both an e4 and d4 player. I play both the moves, and my opponent went with knight f6. And here, normally we would have seen moves like, let's say knight f3, the knight going here, or like, let's say, some sort of bishop f4 or bishop g5. These kind of moves we normally see. Knight c3 is the move that I played though. So knight c3 is a bit unorthodox move, I would say. It's called like the Jobawa system. I believe, let me remove the arrows just a moment. And I'm just trying to remove the arrows, just one more. Oh, yeah. Okay, the arrows are gone. Great. So after knight c3, as I was saying, this was called like this was popularized by Jobawa. Initially, it used to be called like Verso system, and then Jobawa started showing some new ideas with it. So it also had the name Jobawa added to it. Generally, it comes after black goes d5 in this position. But my opponent played c5 here. So he's kind of trying to take it into one of those kind of gambit structures, if I have to say. And I continued with d5, g6, e4, d6. So we reach a pretty standard position. And the funny thing about this position was I was not prepared for this. This was like kind of a new position, already a fresh position to me, and I wasn't sure like what are the common ideas. I mean, I had some ideas. I've seen games, but not like I've played a game before. I'm pretty sure many of you would be thinking maybe go bishop b5 check or something like that. But I'm not going to ask you here what move would you play, because there's different ways to play as white, and all of them are good on their own. Like, there's something good and bad about it. So here in this position, I played g3, and after bishop g7, bishop g2, black played queen a5. And here is where I have my first question for the audience and also for the viewers who are logged on to the platform. So my question is, what would you play as white here? So let me input my question. What would you play as white? And I'm going to give the audience, maybe as it's an opening position, I'll give them more time to think. I'd give them around 90 seconds. And I'm going to give, if you get the position right, the first attempt, you're going to get 10 points. And we'll see how the audience react to this. So I've asked that question to the audience. So now, we have some viewers who have joined us. And let's see how they answer to this. So we still have around, as you could see the timer. So basically I allotted the participants 90 seconds, and there's still 60 seconds left. and the participants are still thinking what move they would play. And seems like we got one right answer from Kurkushetra, because on his first attempt, they got 10 points, so that does mean they got it right. So that's very good. So once the timer runs out, I'll reveal what is the best move according to me in this position. And Lim Kian got 9 points, so that's also pretty good. And let's wait for the time to complete. And then I'll reveal why Queen A5, what is the idea behind it, and how we should respond to it. So we are still waiting for a few more seconds for the timer to run out. Perfect. So the timer has run out, and we have got a few attempts. David got it right. Kurukshetra has 10 points too. Good. So we got, and the correct move here is, as rightly guessed by few participants, it is Bishop D2. So the bishop by going to D2. What happens is, let me end the question. The What happens is, when you go Bishop D2 in this position, you are attacking the queen that is on a5. That is one. That's a very important thing. And also the point to note is, when queen a5 was on the board, the queen was putting pressure on the king, right? There was some knight takes e4 or knight d5 kind of threats. And also, more importantly, another plan that is enabled due to queen a5 is the black going to play b5 zone, because the queen is defending the pawn. So bishop d2 is kind of like an active move that repels the idea of queen a5, because now the queen a5 feels a bit shaky, right? Like, because there's a bishop, and once the knight moves, then the queen would come directly under attack. So I was technically a bit surprised in the game when my opponent went with this move b5. So my opponent is like, I don't care. Like, you go bishop d2, I would still play b5. I'd still go for my own plan. And in this position, what I had to do was would be my next question here. So let me ask a question to the viewers. And what would you play as white for b5? Because black has decided that black doesn't really care about white's threats with bishop d2. So now I'm posing my next question. How would you react to this move played by b5? And let me try to refresh the leaderboard in this position. And just a moment, hopefully the leaderboard gets refreshed. Yeah, I believe I've refreshed my leaderboard, and you can see the points scored by the participants at this point. And so now, as again, I've given the viewers 90 seconds to guess the right move here after b5 for white. And I'll also tell you this, b5 is actually a terrible move. It's just very bad. I think there was just a minor issue on my side, the leaderboard thing. By now, I think it should have automatically updated on, and I believe Praveen has got it right. So Praveen did get the previous position also right, because he had 10 points earlier, and now he has 20 points. So that's a good thing. So he's getting the ideas right. And the important thing is to understand the drawback of b5. And okay, so now let's go and find that brilliant move. I shouldn't be saying brilliant move for my own move that I played, but it is actually a refutation of b5, the move that I played here. And that is white goes e5. It's a very strong move, because here you may think, like, why is this pawn sacrifice? Like, what does this even achieve? But let's go back and first look at the position after b5. So one, we already understood, this queen is in a shaky square because there's a bishop, very strong on d2. And now you can also look at this rook being in a shaky square, this rook over here, because there's a bishop on g2. So look at it, both the white bishops are actually aiming at one of the most critical black pieces, even though there are pawns pieces in between. Like, for example, there's a knight in between, there's a d5, e4 pawn. But if you crash through those barriers, those pieces are going to come under big attack. So e5 is actually a fantastic move, and so it was a kind of a more of an intuitive move for me, because when my opponent played b5, the moves that I was really considering to play was, maybe I was considering a4 first. I was like, maybe I could play a4, but then I was like, what do I do if he goes b4? I gain anything, right? So then I realized, okay, how about I play e5? And then I started calculating. And the idea is very simple. Once I go e5, if black takes the pawn, you have d6. So you're let me make the moves for you. D e5, then you go d6, and this rook on a8. If you look at it, it's like under big risk, right? Like, how do you defend this rook? And let's say some players would be like, I can play e4, but if you play e4, what happens? This goes to e4, and now you see both the bishops, the white bishop and the black, sorry, the bishop on d2 and the bishop on g2, both are aiming and are going to win. We are going to win the rook. For example, let me make the moves: e4, knight e4, some queen b6, and we'll take knight takes f6, and we will win the rook. So for my opponent, e5 was a big shock. So my opponent was like, he realized suddenly the intensity of this position, what's happening, and my opponent rightfully declined the pawn sacrifice. On Not even sacrifice, I don't even say e5 is a sacrifice, it's more of a plan to it. So my opponent declined it with knight g4, and then I played e takes d6, and he played b4. And in this position, let me ask you my next question to the viewers. So here I'm not going to give you 90 seconds. I'm going to edit the settings so that the audience gets only 60 seconds in this position. What would you play as white in this position? That's my question. And let's see how Praveen does, who is kind of like on the highest points right now on the leaderboard. David is right behind him. We have Kurukshetra, we have Lim, Chan, Guan, Jack, Raghu, a lot of audience who have joined us today. I believe around 10 participants are on the class, attending the class today. And let's see how what more they find here as white. So it's white to play, and I'm pretty sure you'd have known that by now. And what would you do as white here? So about 5 seconds left. Great. So let's end the question and see how participants have tried here in this position. So here, the correct move. There's actually two right moves. The one I played, in my opinion, is more precise, but the other option would also be good enough. So you can obviously move knight e4 and kind of like move the knight away from attack and defend the d6 pawn. This is like the okay move. But the one that is more precise and more challenging for black to respond is the one that I was also hoping that you would post as your answer, is queen e2. So a very simple idea. We are saying you are attacking my piece on c3. I'm counter attacking you, and my counter attack threat is far more deadlier. I'm threatening to checkmate black right away, right? So queen e2, a big threat on the board, and black has to respond to it in some way or another. So for queen e2, black decided to play, in my opinion, a very sensible move, which is short castling. Getting the king to the safest possible square. D takes e7, rook e8. So now white is 2 pawns up. That's a lot of pawns. But the problem now is, if you look at it, the position is very messy, right? Like 2 pawns up, but my king is stuck on center, e1, rook is aiming at e8. So if magically black removes the e7 pawn of the board, my queen is under attack. And also if you look at it, the knight on if you look at it, the knight on if you look at the knight on c3, it's being attacked. So let me just check the settings, just a moment. One moment. I believe there is some issue with my settings. Just a moment. Okay. To the audience, just one moment. Let me try to make my stream settings. I believe there is some issues on my stream right now. I was just notified about it. Okay. Okay, hopefully now the things are back to normal. If there's any issue at any point, just let me know. And I believe Tushar on the chat, you want to join this session. Like you can just message the Chesslang team. I believe they'll let you in. So just message them or on the email ID on the session they've given a contact. You could contact them. So I just saw Tushar on the chat. Okay, so I hope the leaderboard is clearly visible, and let me get back to the session. So here, as I was explaining, after rook e8, white is actually in a position where white has to make some big decisions. The knight is being attacked, e7 pawn could come under pressure. So let me ask my next question here, and I'll give 60 seconds, as I think it's like kind of straightforward question. Again, what would you play as white? There is like two options for white in my opinion, and you have to choose between those two. It also seems as a new feature on Chesslang, which says send an expression. So let me test what this does in this position right now. So if I click on this, as the audience or is kind of figuring out the most, I see a lot of emoticons, characters, appreciation, award. So maybe you could put an emoticon to boost the confidence of the participants. So how about we put a smiley, just send to all students. We'll send a smiley. And maybe we can add a message. We'll say good going, maybe something like that. Good going so far to every student. Good going, keep trying. We'll just put good going. I guess we'll do use this, yeah. Good going. I think this is maybe a better one. Yeah, let's say good going. Let's send it. So I guess all the students would be able to see this emoticon also. That's a cool feature. We can motivate kids when they may not be feeling so energetic by seeing an emoticon or smiley. So hopefully participants have guessed. Let me end my question. And here in this position, Praveen is still, I believe, leading with 20 points. We also have some of the participants participating actively. And the right move here, in my opinion, is knight d1, and that's what I also played in the game. If you go knight b5, which is an option, kind of you're trying to maybe go knight d6 and so on. But if you go knight b5, bishop a6, and then there's a lot of complication in this position because your knight is now pinned. And if you go a4, a4 is actually a very smart move because if you look at it, you are saying if you try to en passant, the queen comes under attack. So you are exploiting the pin in an en passant option. So a4 achieves that. But for a4, black can play bishop takes b2, and then this is a very, very complicated position, d6. So now you're saying if you take my rook, I take your rook on a8 and so on. And after knight e5, bishop takes a8, bishop a1. Like, this is practically not, you can't calculate this to in a rapid game with 20 minutes on the clock. It's like so much complications. And also, as I said, I found a better option, which was less complicated. So I went knight d1 here. So I'm removing my knight away, I'm defending the b2 pawn, and things look pretty, okay, right? And bishop goes knight e5. So black's idea now is that now the knight is covering this e5 so that e7 pawn is now being attacked, right? Rook takes e7. So how do I defend e7 pawn is a good question. I mean, and I believe the answer is very simple, so I'm not going to ask you as a question here. You can go d6 here. So now the pawn is defending e7 and the bishop is now attacking the a8 rook. Black goes knight bc6. So here knight bc6 is a defending a8 rook. I think it's very self-explanatory why you would like to play knight bc6 here. And I played knight e3 because I couldn't go really knight f3. I was considering going knight f3, but then it didn't make a lot of sense to me to go knight f3 in this position. So I thought, why not go knight e3? The key idea of knight e3 being one, it kind of puts another kind of a piece in the e file, so my king would feel safer if any attack comes on the e file. And another is possibly some sort of knight c4 ideas, exchanging the knight, or or attacking the queen and so on. And somewhere I had some hope, maybe if situation allows, I can long castle. I know it's a very risky dream to castle long with queen being on a5, bishop on g7, but I want to keep that option open. And here is going to be my next question to the audience here. So far, all my questions were like, what would you play as white? But this time, let's change the question. What would you play as black? And let's give them 75 seconds. We had given 60 and 90 seconds before. Now it's 75 seconds, and it's black's turn to find the move that black would play here. And let's see what our audience comes up with as the best answer here. So we have Vishwa, I think, answering, Lim answering. They're good. A lot of participants are now making their moves, and we still have 30 seconds to go. And so this main feature, what we are testing out, or I'm explaining to you today, is this ask feature. So this is like kind of like an interactive quiz. Every position you can make it as a quiz. We just had, I believe, Nagapan answer the question, and lot of tries. So let's wait for the time to run out. We have 10 more seconds for this position, and we'll see how you would play as black. So if you look at the position already, it's a very complex position, I would say. Like, okay, the time's run out. Praveen is still leading the leaderboard. Jack's right behind. David is also on the third spot for now. And I believe most of you had guessed the right move. It is bishop a6. So what black does here is, even though black is 2 pawns down, and that two central pawns, and how often do you see like right out of the opening by move 10, move 12, white pawns marched basically all the way next to promoting to a queen, right, on e7 and d6. So bishop a6 is a very aggressive and kind of showing a lot of intent from black side, saying, like, I'm going to put up a tough fight. I'm not going to, throw away my game because I'm 2 pawns down. Like, it's very important, I think, as if you want to become a strong player, to put up fight even in very bad or dubious positions, because who knows, you may be able to fight back and steal a half a point back, or maybe sometimes even a full point back. So that is a very important thing to know. So bishop a6, my queen is under attack. There's not a lot of squares my queen can go, actually, right? I can go queen d1. That's like the only move I could see to save my queen, and that's what I did here. I went queen d1. And now comes my next question for the audience. And that is, again, what would you play as black? So you played bishop a6, gained a tempo, attacked my queen. But now again, I moved my queen back. Now what do you do? How does black try to keep the game going? Like, or what should black play here? And remember, this position is complex, and that does mean, like, black is not aiming for like some sort of a simplistic position or so. Black is trying to, complicate things, try to create practical chances. So think from that perspective, like, what would you do to create the best practical chance for yourself in this position, and so on. So there's around 30 seconds left here. And also keep in mind, this was played in a rapid game. So, complications means different in a standard games is a rapid game, because the time you have to figure out things are much lower. So, so let's see how our audiences are guessing this move. So Praveen is still leading. I believe David has come back. I believe David was on third spot the previous time. Now he's moved up one. So let's see what black should do. Actually, I just made a very minor mistake here, which is that I had inputted the best move as the one that was played in the game, but actually my question was supposed to be the move that was, you know, the move. Let me, yeah. So sorry, I just got distracted because of. So the move that Black should have played was actually the variation move and not the main move. And black should have played queen b6. So the idea of queen b6 is more of like trying to hit on this pawn and you know indirectly attack the pawn. But the move my opponent played was very interesting, but not the most precise one. He went knight d4. And the idea of knight d4, if you look at it, it is like, did he just blunder a rook, you would think, right? A8 rook seems to be hanging. There's a g2 bishop that just directly is, aiming at and it could pick up the a8 rook. But picking up the a8 rook would not be a wise idea, in my opinion, in this position. Because you already know that white is two pawns up, so we shouldn't be too greedy. That is one. Another thing about it, why it may not be a wise decision, is because then the h1 rook could come under pressure very easily. H1 rook could come under pressure. So let me just a moment. Okay, I hope the audience could see the leaderboard. Yeah, so the H1 rook could come easily under pressure. Sorry for the technical difficulties. As I'm streaming, I'm changing the settings so to make the best possible stream. So there may be minor technical issues during the stream. So in this position, after bishop a8, as I was explaining, if you capture rook a8, and then the bishop could drop back and attack the h1 rook and so on. So better not to be too greedy, and instead for knight d4, what I decided to play was I played f4. I really like this move because it creates some escape square for the king to f2, and it's a pretty quiet position. So now my opponent is like, okay, I believe in the clock he had around 5 minutes and I had around 7 to 8 minutes. So we had burnt most of our time, and this was basically around 7 or 8. So basically, whoever wins kind of closes towards being the leader of the tournament. My opponent played a very interesting sacrifice. It would work except for this one minor problem, and that is it's not queen c2 is not the problem because it's very self-explanatory. You would capture with the queen, right? If you capture knight takes c2, it would be a big risk because knight d3 check. That's the whole idea, right? After queen c2, knight d3 check. I'm going to ask my next question to the audience here, and I'm going to give them maybe 75 seconds. I think that's a good time. What would you play as white here? So let me change the question, and time in seconds 75. And yes, what would you play as white? You may ask, like, why am I even asking this question? The king is under check, I move my king. But the question is, where do you move your king, right? There's three possible squares, d1, f1, e2. And you have to pick the right square of the three. So as you could see, Praveen is still having the honor badge first as he's on 36 points. Limcan is coming up strongly, 32 points. David 24, Nagappan on 19, Sandeep on 15. Uh, a lot of attempts by a lot of players. And let's see. We still have 10 seconds in this position. And okay, so let me end this question. Let's get back. And if you had guessed that I would put my king to d1 or e2, you are wrong. Because let's first look what happens with d1. King d1 looks very logical, move the king away and on. But knight b2 is a very strong move in my opinion. And in case if you go something like king c1, there is always knight d3 check possibility, or there's also a very big idea for black, which is just simply even go bishop d3, attack the queen, then c4 is coming up, and this position is like such. I would say it's actually most likely white may end up even like losing this position, like after this king c1, and the king is in such an unsafe position. Queen a3 is a big threat. As I said, bishop d3 is the most critical threat in this position. So you don't want to walk into a position where your king is very unsafe. And after knight d3, king e2 also faces a similar fate. King e2 would allow, like, some, lot of different knight f4 check, knight takes b2 check, and and so on. King f1 is the best move, and if you had guessed it, fantastic. The reason why king f1 is very good is because if, let's say, if knight takes b2, you play knight e2 in this position. And instead, if you go king f2, it becomes like a repetition check. They would go knight d3 check. The king is again under pressure, and then the king again, if goes king f1, you go knight b2 check. But you have this nice knight e2 check, and if black goes bishop d3, putting pressure on the queen, there's queen b3, and after queen a6, bishop takes a8, bishop takes e2, king f2, knight d3, and the king actually, bravely walks into king takes e2. So I actually had calculated all the way up to king f2 when during the game before I made my king f1 decision, and I realized in this position after knight c1, king f2. So I have somewhere over here things became a bit fuzzy for me in calculation, and I wasn't sure what would happen. Because here, if you look at it, there is, queen e2 check and so on, or bishop a1 is hanging. But first, let's look at queen e2, because I believe we need to look at the most posing lines first. Queen e2, king g1, and if knight d3, threatening a checkmate on queen f2, we have rook f1. We have covered that safely. There's no mate here. But in case after queen e2, king g1, if black decides to play something like knight b3, here is where you see like the beauty of this whole variation. I just ignore every hanging piece, this rook, this bishop, and I'm saying I'm going to give you another piece or another pawn hanging. I'll just play d7. So this is such a amazing position. Like, white is a queen down, but the rook is hanging, bishop is hanging, but black can't really do much, because after d7, if rook takes bishop, right? Rook takes a8. Maybe you can play d8 promoted to queens. I think d8 would be better, because as you promote, you're also defending d2 indirectly, right? Rook takes d8, e takes d8, queens, bishop f8, and now I just can take this knight. And all of a sudden, you look at the piece count, there is 2 rooks and a knight extra for white. That's a huge material advantage. So much extra material. So this d7 move, this move is the one that's kind of like changing the whole game. Basically the threat to go d7. So in this position, instead of queen e2, if black goes knight b3, the story is pretty much same. d7 lands on the board, and again, it doesn't matter which piece is hanging, because I need to pick up a new queen on d8 next move. And for example, maybe some players would be thinking, why not I go queen b5, right? If you capture d takes rook, I'll play queen takes rook. But here is the funny thing. I wouldn't take the rook. I can instead just simply go d8 and make a queen this way. And if knight takes a1, let's count the material. White has a rook, black has a rook, white has a queen, black has a queen. White has 3 minor pieces, whereas black has only 2. And the other thing being the knight on a1 is basically trapped. So all these things are completely in favor of white. So white should be able to win this game. So because of this line knight takes b2 is not so good. And my opponent decided to go knight takes f4. And this is also a check. So this is aimed more at stopping knight e2, right? Actually, my opponent was, to be honest, he was a bit surprised when I went king f1, because you don't play king f1 with so confidently, right? But I played that move once because I had the confidence, because I had calculated the complications. And after knight f4, now I believe things are far more smoother. So there's like only one nice way to stop the check, and that is you put the knight in between the bishop and the king with knight c4. And here my opponent realized, okay, it's about to be over. And so my opponent was like, let's try some more tactics before we resign, or so my opponent tried b3. To be honest, this is a move that caught me a bit by surprise, but my position was so good enough that I had extra material that it did not was not anything very dangerous for me, because after bishop takes a5, b takes c2. This looks like just a queen trade, but the point being the knight on c4 is being attacked, right? Bishop c4 is going to come with a check. So I decided I'll just simply handle it with g takes f4. When you are up material, capture as much as you can, right? I believe there's a very famous saying, if there's a way to checkmate your opponent, checkmate it. If not, just ensure you can get as much material as possible, because that's the next best thing for you to take you closer towards winning the game. My opponent played bishop b2, and I'm going to ask a very simple question. This is not a tough one, so I'm going to give only white participant only 60 seconds here. What would you play as white here? Like, there's actually no one correct answer, but I would like to give a chance to see how participants think here. There's quite a few ways white can get an advantage, a decisive advantage. But the one that I played, I also checked it later on after the game with the computer, and that was the right move, the right approach. So I would like to, you know, test the audience about this. So we are about half an hour into the class, and I'm very, amazed by the participation. A lot of active responses, replies. Praveen is on the top of the leaderboard, I think, right from move 2 or move 3. Limkian was chasing him. Limkian is actively answering 39 points. He just got 7 more points. And we'll see how white responds in this position. Okay, great. So time's up, and let me end the question so that I can reveal the answer. So here, most likely, most of you would have played bishop a8, and as I said, that is also okay. But if you look from a move order position, the correct move is not bishop a8, but the playing bishop a8 at a later stage. First, it is to play knight e2. So the idea of knight e2 is kind of a funny plan. The thing is, it controls the c1 square, so there's no random c1 queens check, and that's one. Another, it stops bishop c4. I mean, if bishop c4, it comes with a check normally, right? So knight e2 here doesn't allow that check to happen. And more importantly, by going knight e2, I'm also kind of telling black, if you play bishop a1, I can immediately go king f2 and activate my rook if required. So this was mainly the reason which discourages my opponent from taking a1 in comparison to playing bishop takes a8. Because if bishop a1 here, then there's king f2, and the rook is attacking the bishop, and this white bishop is attacking the rook. And also remember, there's always the d7 pawn threat. So my opponent played bishop c4, very practical move. And let me remove the highlights. So after bishop c4, now I play bishop a8. Bishop takes a1, and now the big threat is this is coming. So I wish I could play d7, but c1 queen. I was calculating about this because I had some time on the clock, but I was like, why should I do all this messy stuff? The queen is hanging, rook is hanging, everything. But why unnecessarily complicate things? I think this is also another important thing. If you see a forced way to win, and or you're a way to win very confidently, go for that path instead of seeing a very messy but very aesthetically win. Like the aesthetic win is good, but more priority should be given to get that point in the bag than to however you even if you play some very ugly moves, but if the job gets done, the job gets done. So I just played king f2 here, and my opponent realized there is nothing much he could do, because if you look at it in this position, the bishop is being attacked, d7 is coming up, and already black is a piece down, so black can't really do much, and black resigned. So I hope you had learned some interesting positions or ideas from this game, and I have another game prepared, so let's go on to that. Before that, let's quickly go through the full game, just the main moves alone, so that you all get an idea of how this game progressed. So it was d4, knight f6, knight c3, c5, d5, g6, and this is where I kind of got out of my theoretical book. Black decided to make the game fun with b5, but it was immediately refuted, and over here things got very, very messy, and then this is how the game basically progressed. King f1 is actually the best move, and a very complex but fun game. Okay, so let's go on to my next game. So this game, as I said, the one that we just saw was split in rapid game. The next one was split in a classical one, but that's only a short game. So it's going to be equally fun as this one. And this game, this was played in a tournament called the Potawatomi Open in US in 20. I played this in 2018, and my opponent in this game is Grandmaster Dmitry Gurevich, a very legendary Grandmaster. Has played against all the leading players back in the day. When I said legendary, it's a little understood. He's a kind of an old Grandmaster, but has played a lot of grandmasters from USSR. He's from USSR he then later moved on to America, USA, and so on. And in this game, I'm playing white, and this was also a very short game. So keep your tactical alertness very high, I would say. So I started with e4. My opponent played c5, and I had prepared, and I saw that his responses to the C3 Sicilian were not so optimal. I mean, have played a lot of different moves in this position as white B3, knight F3. You wouldn't believe I even played knight A3 as when I was a 14, 15-year-old player. And I actually have a pretty decent score with knight A3. I know knight A3 looks like a joke of a move, but actually there are okay-ish ideas behind it. But I would not suggest you to play knight A3. Better is to play knight F3 and play the main lane or something like that. I've played closest lane. I've tried a lot of different moves here. And for this game, as I sensed that my opponent had some opening issues in the C3 Sicilian, I decided to target that. So I played E4, C5, C3, and my opponent played D5. And here, after D5, E takes D5, Queen D5. And before, actually, I just want to add one note. Instead of D5, the other big move for black is to go knight F6. So knight F6 is the other main line, and D5 is the other line. So in this game, black goes D5, E D5, Queen D5, D4, knight C6, knight F3. Standard opening moves. And here, normally black goes knight F6 or E6 and things like that. My opponent played a move that, in my opinion, was a bit strange, tiny strange. Just he went bishop F5. I'm not a big fan of this move for black, to be honest. And I would like to ask the viewers a question here. So, what would you play as white? And actually, I'll give them 75 seconds because it's opening positions with a lot of possibilities for white to play. And let's see how the audience answer here. So Praveen is still leading the leaderboard with 52. Lim is on 39. David is on 30. Vishwa is on 27. Jack is right there on 29. And we have around 42 seconds. So how about we do give an expression for the participants? Like, I don't know, celebration. Let's see what. Okay, they have some interesting. What is it? What do they have on award? Oh, some stars. I think we'll give the stars at the end of the class. Let's cheer them up. I don't know. Let's give them a clap for actively participating. How about that? Great answer so far. Maybe let's give that. Let's send it to all the participants and to all students. Let's send them one. We're just giving some appreciation for actively guessing the answers. So here, let me end the question. And in this position, the move that I played is bishop e3. So I'm playing a very simplistic move, I would say here. I'm just saying, I'm threatening to take the pawn. It will be a free pawn if you don't react to my threat of bishop e3, and I'm developing a bishop in the process, right? And so that's basically my main threat of bishop e3. And my opponent played cd4, and I have my next question immediately. How do you recapture? So let me change the question here. Instead of always asking what would you play as white, let's slightly change the question. How do you recapture on d4? So there was what? Technically four, let's give them 60 seconds this time. There is what? Technically four recaptures, right? C pawn, bishop, knight. Even though queen takes is just terrible, but that's a possibility. It's not an illegal move. So there's four possible recaptures in this position. So we'll see how would you recapture on d4. Let's see if Lim Kian can go past. Oh wow, Lim Kian just went past Praveen, but then Praveen got back in the leaderboard. like immediately he snatched the leader position right back from Lemke. There's a big difference in points between number one and two in comparison to the third, like close to 20 points difference. We'll see if they can catch up. It'll be interesting. And the question here is how do you recapture on d4? And still, I believe participants are trying their best to find a move. Okay, so time's run out. So let me end the question. And if you had get something like I would capture back with a pawn, which makes the most logical sense, you're actually wrong because this is okay. I'm not saying it's a bad move, but here the idea of knight c3 is very direct, right? You're threatening to attack the queen with the tempo, but that's why this bishop comes into a role. Black would play bishop b1, rook b1, and he would go e6, and then there's bishop b4 check and all this, and I believe black is doing perfectly fine. So cd4 would not be a good option, sorry, in this position. And bishop d4, not a great one, right? There's some, you always, let me remove this arrow, just a moment. If bishop d4, then there is, even knight d4 possibilities or just long castle. The best option and move is the one that I played, which is taking with the knight. Once you take with the knight, you are kind of simplified the center. And more importantly, again, now you're forcing black to make a decision, in my opinion. And the point being, the knight on d4 is going to attack. I mean, it's attacking the f5 bishop. So I'm threatening maybe I'll play knight takes f5 and exchange, get a double bishop advantage right out of the opening. And the center being so clarified, there's like no pawns. Double bishop could be a huge advantage. So my opponent played knight takes d4 now. And here, should I ask the question? Yeah, let me ask audience a question again. Again, the same question. How would you recapture on d4? But let's give them 30 seconds now because now there's only three recaptures on d4 because the knight's missing. Would you capture with a pawn, or would you capture with a bishop, or would you capture with a queen now? So basically, I did recycle the question, but the question still works because there's a recapture anyway on d4 again. So this is the first time I think gave 30 seconds. So let's see how quickly the audience are able to find a move right here. Okay, so here the right answer is if you should capture with the pawn. The point of it being, then you may ask me like, just a move ago you said capturing CD4 would lead us to nothing. What has changed now? There's a very big difference. If black goes bishop takes b1 now, white has this very nice intermediate check with queen a4, and now you see the missing knight's value. Because if for queen a4, if you block the check with queen c6 or queen d7, this bishop jumps in and it's game over. You win the queen. And if king d8, then you play rook b1 and black has lost the right to castle. This is the very key differentiator between directly playing c takes d4 and first playing knight takes d4 and exchanging the knights and then playing c takes d4. And here first, so now cd4, and now you would have guessed the threat of knight c3 is so huge, right? It's like coming there. So black's already in big trouble, and black went knight f6 in this position. And I'm not even going to ask you a question because knight c3 is, I've already said that's the move. It's so logical. So white develops the knight with a tempo attacking the queen, and black decided to go queen a5. There are quite a few options for black. I'll just show you how the game would have proceeded if those had happened. If let's say something like queen d6 or queen d8, black is basically falling behind in development and the king is always open to bishop b5 kind of checks. So white gets a lot of initiative. So queen a5 was played in the game, and let me ask my next question. How would you keep the initiative going? So as you know, white has the initiative now, but how can white sustain the initiative? How would you keep the initiative going for white? And I'll give them 45 seconds to the viewers here, and let me ask them a question. So we see Lim Kian officially taking over as the new leader, 75 points, and Praveen is on 70. Let's see. We still have 5 seconds for this puzzle. Or this answer. Okay, so let me end the question. And if you had guessed Queen B3, really good job. So as the question was kind of like a loaded question, right? I was asking you, how do you keep the initiative going? Some of you may have said this is the move to keep the initiative going, but this is actually not the move to keep the initiative going because Black would retreat back with his bishop, and after takes, knight takes, White still has the lead in development, but not anything very concrete or like a big advantage, I would say. The correct answer is Queen B3. So White is saying, I'm attacking your pawn on B7. That's one. And another thing is, if you play some E6, now I can take queen b7 if I want, or I also have bishop b5 check. And by playing e6, you have blocked this bishop from jumping to d7, and because there's a pawn in between. So now the king is also under danger. So white is bringing the heaviest piece that's out there for to keep the initiative going, which is the queen in this position. And now black is actually in a kind of a big trouble, I would say, right? Queen b3. And my opponent had to make a very uncomfortable decision, I would say. Mountain long castled. Very bold move, you may say, or a very dubious idea to get his king to open c file, right? It's such a big decision. To be honest, I was a bit shocked. But but the circumstances are such that that not a lot could be done by black here. Okay, I have a question. What would you play as white? Because there are some free pawns, some checks possible, some direct attack on the black king, and so on. So let me give the question: what would you play as white? And let's give a good amount of time. Let's give 90 seconds because a lot of possibilities for white and black, for white especially here. So the question is, how would you play as white? Like, what would be the move that you would play here? I actually made a small error on when I feeded the question. I think this is something I've already done on the earlier question also, which is not this in this game, the previous game, which is the move that I played here is actually not the right move. It's a slightly dubious one, but I had given that as the right answer. I forgot to change the solution part. Sorry about that, but I'll explain it to you, and I hope it doesn't make a big change on the leaderboard. Yeah. So we still have around 25 seconds left. 5 seconds left. So let's see how the answers are so far. And yep, the puzzle is over. Timer is over, I mean. And in this position, if you had guessed, a free pawn, I'll go capture it. We're terribly wrong because black would just simply move e6, the queen struck. So this is an absolute no. Don't go for the material. And f7 pawn doesn't make any big difference. Black's king is on the queen side now, right? The right move for which you should have gotten the points is actually bishop e2. I wrongly feeded the wrong. I didn't change the solution. Sorry about that. So for bishop e2 is the best move for white. So bishop e2 is like saying, okay, now I'm going to short castle. I'm going to go rook c1, and I'm going to basically play bishop f3. That's also another big idea, aiming at the b7 pawn. Basically go after the king. And in case of black goes bishop e6 here, defending this pawn, attacking the queen. Now white goes bishop c4, and white after bishop c4, queen c4, king b8. Now you can take this pawn, and there's no e6 to really trap, but there's a very sharp line. I wouldn't ask you to guess because it's very sharp, which starts with e5. And the point is being, if you play d e5 or so, there is some big idea. So I'll just show you the most crux of this variation, which is that rook d1. So I'm just trying to defend the pawn, and here there's a fantastic line that starts with bishop a3. So the point is the bishop is trying to distract this b2 pawn, so that if I take, there's queen takes knight check, and after short castle, there's bishop takes b2. By the way, this was all analysis that did not happen in the game. And here I can play queen takes g7, and if you take my knight, I take your knight on f6. And white's position is favorable here. So, but none of this happened because I played queen c4 check in the game, which is actually a dubious move, slightly dubious, because it doesn't help in the initiative in any way. And in case if any of you had suggested rook c1, I think I should mention this because rook c1 is a very critical line. Black would respond with bishop e6, and that's my good guess. And after, if you move the knight anywhere with a check, the king just moves away. Like let's say knight b5 check, king b8. Actually, sorry, my bad. You can't move the check. I mean, what am I talking about? The knight is pinned. Sorry about it. I just hallucinated for a second. Yeah, the knight can't move away, right? The knight is being pinned here. So after bishop e6, it's just you have to play bishop c4. Let me remove the arrows. So if bishop c4, bishop takes c4, queen c4, king b8. This is also okay, nothing special. There's already a game with this particular line played in 2016, I believe. So the move that I played in the game, queen c4, is not as good as either bishop e2 or maybe rook c1. So queen c4, and if black goes queen c7, my plan was to go queen a4, and after king b8, go knight b5, and if queen b6, there is d5 on the board, and a7 is basically lost. So in the game though, what black did is for queen c4 check, black went king b8. And as I said, queen c4 was dubious move, so I had lost considerable amount of advantage. So now my question here would be, let me throw an asked question to the audience. What would you play as white here? What would you play as white? And I'll give 60 seconds now, and let's see what would be the best move for white. And here I can say confidently, the move that I played is the best move, so it's like I don't have to change the solution, or I don't have to change any settings on the asked question. Yeah. So right now we have Praveen and Lim Kian basically fighting against each other for the top spot. David is fast catching up. I don't know where David was, but David is now like coming back. It's very strong. And I think I'll be able to wrap up the session in under maximum 5 to 10 minutes. So if you have the time, I know it's around a 1 hour session. Just hang in there, and I believe you should all be able to see the full game completely. Okay, great. Time's up. And for the first time, I think we have a new leader. Lim Kian is now leading. He has overtaken Praveen. And the right move here in this position after King b8 is b4. If any of you had guessed the move bishop f4, there's a big flaw to this idea. If king a8, yes, you just simply go bishop c7, you win, and double it. Like both are attacked, you win a material. But there's a very strong response for black, and that starts with e5. I hope you all saw this move, and that's why you did not play bishop f4. This move is so strong of a response, I would say, because if you play d5, then there is knight d5, and then the knight is, you could exchange, knight takes f4 is coming, or if long castle, there is rook c8, and if so moving away, getting away from the pin, and if rook takes d5, then there is rook takes c4. If rook a5, there is rook f4. I could play bishop c4, but this is a bit messy position. What do I have? I have a rook, I have a knight, and I have a pawn for the queen. White to do this. And if I play bishop takes e5 with a check, then black gets his bishop into the game. And now all of a sudden the tables have turned. White's king is under danger now, right? Because rook he8 is coming up. And if bishop e2, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen e5, white would short castle, the position is fairly equal. So let's get back to the game. And if you had guessed before, it's the right move. So you're forcing black to make a decision. And here black has some options with his queen. Like actually not some, like bunch of options. So we will cover one by one. And let's start with maybe queen a6. And I remember when I played b4, I spent around 25 to 30 minutes because, and I realized it was a critical moment, and I realized the advantage was kind of slipping away from my hand. So I had to find some very critical decisions. If queen a6, I could just simply take and go bishop a6, but if white wants something more, white should go knight b5, the threat of queen c7 check. And if knight d5, there is this nice little check, bishop f4, and after e5, bishop takes e5. Because in case of knight f4, I just want to show that if knight f4, there's queen c7, not queen c8, sorry, let me remove the arrow. There's queen c7 check and queen takes d8 if knight f4. So for e5, bishop takes e5, king a8, and here comes a beautiful move for white, which is queen takes d5 with the idea of knight c7 check. And if bishop takes b4, you go king d1 and queen a5. The queen comes in time to defend, and it's like it's white saves the day basically. So this is queen a6 if queen a6. The other option is obviously queen b6 instead of queen a6. Then I think the answer is fairly easier. White just goes d5, and if queen a6 again now, it's basically like the same line as the previous one, the only difference the pawn being on d5 instead of d4, and that leads or that gives white some new options, which is like here you can go rook d1 now, directly pinning the knight, and if queen c6 now you have bishop f4, because if you go e6 in this position, you can go bishop f4 check, and if king a8 you have knight c7 check, and now if knight takes c7 it's a backline checkmate. And here for queen c6, here now white goes bishop f4 check, king a8, knight c7 check, again the backrank idea, king b8, rook d5, and white wins material. And if queen a3 for b4, then you just simply go knight b5, threatening queen c7, it's game over. So black went queen c7. So black responded, black is like, let's exchange queens, it would be a okay position. And, or at least the impact of that attack would reduce, right, after queen c7. And I realized I have to exchange, I can't go queen b3. That's like kind of like pulling back from the attack. So I kept the initiative going, so I had to exchange with queen takes c7, king c7, and here, in this position, I played bishop f4. So now I have a question for the audience. What would you play as black? And let me type the solution here. Okay, let me ask. Yeah. So now it's black to play. Let's see what black does in this position. So this time the solution that was played in the game was not the right move, but an alternate move would be the right one. This time I realized how to change the settings, and I did change the right move. We have Lemkian, David, Jack, Nagappan all are actively participating. We have 4 more seconds for this puzzle. Okay, so let's end the puzzle now. Let's see the right move. The right move here for black after bishop f4 check would have been to play e5. I can flip the board. E5 would have been the best move, because after e5, the point of it being if d takes e5, there is this very sharp move g5, and then this is how black kind of saves the day, because if you go bishop takes b4 directly, there is e takes f6 with a check. But after g5, if bishop g5, then you play bishop b4, you are pinning the knight, and it's black's in the game, completely in the game. Rook is going to join the attack, white's in danger. So it's g5, then black's doing great. And in case if you play bishop takes e5, now you can go king c8, and now this threat is alive, so white has to spend a move. They play a3, but then black goes knight g4, and black is now attacking the bishop. If the bishop moves, the pawn is hanging. So white is kind of has to be very precise to keep the balance or like have a slight edge. My opponent made a mistake. My opponent played king c8 directly without e5, and this gives me a strong initiative. So after king c8, let me ask a question. This one is a fairly easy one, so maybe I'll give only 30 seconds to the audience. What would you play as white? And I hope, I think, yeah, okay, solution is right. Let me ask, what would you play as white here? How do you keep your initiative going? And this is a fairly easy question. That's why I gave less number of points or less time to solve. Okay, so we got Praveen kind of coming back, and then again Limcan taking back the lead. So let's end the question. And the move that in this position, if you had guessed as Rook C1, you're absolutely right. Rook C1 is the move to keep the initiative going. But if you go Knight B5, then again this E5 idea kind of bothers a bit because Bishop B4 is a big threat, right? And the king's stuck on E1. So Rook C1 is correct. And now Black did play E5. But now you can just simply, okay, actually here, I think this is a good question here. For Rook C1, E5, E5 is a mistake, as I said. How would you play as white? And I would give more time here because this is a slightly more complex position. So let me give the audience 60 seconds. Would you take the pawn or would you move the knight, give some check against the king? We'll see how the audience respond here. I'm about to wrap up the game, so another 2-3 questions basically, and then I'll quickly show how the game completed. And I think let's give audience some appreciation or on target something. Let's give them some maybe characters. I don't know. I haven't looked at this. Oh, there's actually a panda character. I don't know. We could give that or celebration. Let's celebrate the participants for being active so far. Let's send them a celebration. Yeah. So let's end the question now. And if you had guessed in this position that the move that you would play is some knight discovered check, only one of the knight discovered check is good. The others are just terrible. Like that doesn't achieve anything. Knight d5 is an okay move because if you go king d8, then there is bishop takes e5, bishop d6, and it's a okay position. Like white has edge, but nothing like immediately like can be visible. If king d7 for knight d5, then you have rook c7 check, king d6, d e5, king d5, bishop c4, king e4, some complex variations. Or in case instead of this checks, if you want to give, you can also give bishop b5, bishop b5 check. So some variations all included. But knight d5, as I said, is not so precise. But if you are given knight b5 or knight a4 or knight e4, all these checks achieve nothing for white, absolutely nothing. Black is doing perfectly fine. So the best is just simply taking d takes e5, and here if bishop takes b4, you have ef6, and after rook h8, you defend with bishop e3, and white is an extra piece up. And in the game, black went knight h5, and here I would like to let me think if I should ask you this question or I should just answer this. Actually, let's keep going. In the game, I played bishop d2, which is, in my opinion, is a mistake. I should have played bishop e3 because after bishop e3, bishop takes b4. I just go bishop e2, attack the knight, have a great position, short castle threatened, all good. But bishop d2 was slightly more passive, and here my opponent he played rook d2. I'm not a big fan of this move. I think he could have just played g6. This is a strong idea with g6 because now rook d2 is threatened, followed by bishop h6 check, and win the rook. So I realized g6 only after I played bishop d2, and I was like, oh no, what did I do? If my opponent finds it, I'm interested. I have to be precise. But my opponent went for a much more Interesting but dubious plan. Like it's like with precise play, white just refutes this whole line, which is after king d2, bishop b4. I think I'll ask my next question here, and this I would give 45 seconds here as I'm kind of running out of time. What would you play as white here? Have had more students join as we progress with the session. And Lim Kian and Praveen are continuing to be on the top of the leaderboard. And let us see how who ends up first. As I said, there's only like one or two more questions left. There's a very minute technical point here behind the correct move. And that's the move that I also played in the game. Okay, so let me end the question. So the correct move here is if you had played king e3, fantastic, very good job. If you had guessed bishop e2, the problem is now the knight comes into the game. So the point of king e3, it is not just walking away from the pin, but it is about taking control of the square of f4. So now the knight on h5 is kind of trapped. That's the key thing. And in case of bishop c5 check, you go king f3. So now this bishop is also going to be coming under pin very soon, and g4 is coming up. That's why king e3 is the correct move. You don't go some king d1, king e1, anything like that, or king e2 also. So king e3 is precise for that reason. And after king b8, I go bishop e2. And now I'm attacking. So in case if I go king f3 now, the problem with this decision is that there is rook c8. And my knight is under attack. So what I do is I go bishop e2. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting both the rooks so that if rook c8 I can just move my knight away if there's a problem. And now in the process I'm attacking the knight also on h5. And black played bishop c5 check, king f3, and black goes bishop d7. And I played g4 now, and now the knight is trapped, right? And black can go bishop c6 check, but then you just simply go knight e4 here. And after f5, it is gf5, bishop takes d4, bishop d4, then rook c6, bc6, king, knight g5. And here you just, I just quickly ran, bishop e5, knight s1, rook e8, and white is having a strong position, and white should win on this game. So in the game, after bishop a3, I'm going to ask, maybe this could be the last question of the session. So let me give maybe 60 seconds. What would you play as white? And the precise move, there's like many winning moves, very simple moves, but the precise move is something that I played in the game. And this is the last question. So this is the last chance for Praveen, Lim, Kian, for one of them to take the lead, or maybe switch in the leader standings. Thirty more seconds. Wow, we got David also rapidly coming up on the leaderboard. He got 100 points. So we have 3 participants over 100 points in today's 2 games questions that we had. Oh wow, some of the participants are trying multiple times, and I guess they are figuring it out. 5 more seconds. I guess Lim Kian is the best performer of today. So he found the answer in 2 attempts. And so the right move here is not the right move. I wouldn't say the right move, I'd say the precise move. Because even gh5 is okay. It's not what's wrong with this, right? You just take, and if bishop c6, you go knight e4, bishop c1, rook c1, you have an extra piece. But the precision here is bishop b5. So you're blocking bishop c6 check from happening, and you're going to a more simplified endgame. If you look at this position, it's winning. I'm not saying it's not winning, but you have to calculate f5 here. If ef6, you have to calculate rook e8. There is some messiness still to the position, and you don't want that kind of minor kind of a uneasy feeling. If it goes wrong, what will I do? But all that is taken care of when you go bishop b5, because you are forcing the decisions on the board. Because if he takes, you take. If he takes c1, you take. and then h5 knight is struck. Just rook and knight versus rook. I'm pretty sure you all can win that easily. So black goes bishop e6, refusing to exchange the bishop. And now I'm happy because there's no bishop c6 check and d5 is controlled by the knight. So I play gh5. Black still tried to mess the game a bit. So black goes rook c8. Black's full rook down. And I was like, okay, now it's very simple. I just go bishop d3. I'm not going to complicate anything here. I think black was hoping that if I go knight e2, maybe throw in a bishop d5 check, something like that. I wasn't really interested in any of that. I just went bishop d3, and after bishop b2, I just move my knight now to e2, and now the bishop is defending the knight. Everything is all good. After bishop c1, rook c1, and black resigned in this position. So complicated, interesting game. I really enjoyed playing this game also because I think this was the last round of the tournament, and I ended up winning this tournament if I'm not mistaken. So very sharp and very nice game. And also let's look at the leaderboard one last time. Lim Kian 139 points, Praveen 124, David 100, Vishwa 76. As you could see, a lot of different points being scored, and very good tries by all the participants. So how about we give one final expression to say, or award? Let's give, I don't know if we gave an award earlier. So let's give this trophy award to everyone. Great, great, great solving maybe with the message. And thanks for logging in. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, great solving and thanks for logging in. Let's send this medal to everyone. And so that's actually the one games that I wanted to share about. And also we use the ask feature, the medals and the expressions, emoticons, everything. It was, I believe, a very interactive session. I hope the audience learned or learned something new, or did some active calculation and gained some ideas. So that's basically today's session. I'm Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan. Thanks for logging in, and also do check out the Academy's website, social media pages. It's ChessGyan, ChessGyan.com. We have a lot of different chess programs for players of all ages, all rating levels. And also do check out this platform like ChessLang, where they have this the ask features, and I believe they have a lot more features. This is one of the many different features that they have on their platform. So that's basically today's session. Thanks everyone for logging in. I'll see you all on a different stream or a video on the YouTube channel, Academy YouTube channel, because we post videos, at least 2 videos a week. So there's always some new content you could be learning whenever you log on to the channel. And also do subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified of all the updates and different videos and the chess puzzles we post on our YouTube channel. Bye bye everyone. Signing off, Priyadarshan. See you all. Bye.